I wish I could sit across from you right now, cup of coffee in hand, look you in the eyes and say, I see your pain, and I know what it's like to be shattered by someone you trusted. Maybe you've asked the same question I once whispered through tears. How do you forgive someone who broke me? Forgiveness feels simple until it's personal, sounds holy until it asks something of you that feels impossible, especially when the wound isn't just a scar, it's still bleeding. But here's what I've come to learn. Forgiveness isn't something we do because the other person deserves it. Forgiveness is something we do because we deserve freedom. Today, I want to walk with you through a process that is honest, biblical, and healing. Not fluffy, not fast, but full of grace. Because the goal isn't to pretend it didn't hurt. The goal is to stop allowing what broke you to keep breaking you. Are you ready to begin that journey together? Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many of us wrestle with it, not because we don't want to forgive, but because we've been taught, whether directly or indirectly, that forgiveness means saying what happened was okay. But what if it wasn't okay? What if the wound is still fresh, the betrayal still echoes in your thoughts, and the loss still sits in your chest like a stone? Here's what I want you to hear deep in your soul. Forgiveness is not saying that what happened was right. It's not brushing off the pain, minimizing the violation, or giving the other person a free pass. Forgiveness does not mean endorsing bad behavior. It means choosing not to be chained to it anymore. There's a difference between releasing the weight of bitterness and pretending the pain didn't matter. The hurt mattered. It still matters. But forgiveness gives you the space to acknowledge the full depth of that hurt without letting it control your identity or dictate your future. You see, when someone breaks you, especially someone close, it feels like they've stolen something sacred. And holding on to anger can feel like a form of protection, a shield against further pain. We think, if I stay mad, I stay guarded. If I let it go, I become vulnerable again. But here's the truth, the world doesn't teach well. Bitterness may feel like strength at first, but over time it becomes a prison. You don't lock them in it, you lock yourself in it. Forgiveness then becomes the key to your freedom. It's not about letting them off the hook. It's about taking your heart off the hook. Choosing to forgive is not the same as choosing to forget. You may remember what happened for the rest of your life, but when you forgive, you give that memory less power to define your today or steal from your tomorrow. Some days forgiveness will feel like weakness. You'll wonder why you're the one doing the hard work of letting go when they were the one who caused the pain. But forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the greatest act of strength your soul can offer, because it requires you to trust God with the justice you never received. It calls you to surrender your need to make things right and instead allow God to make your heart whole. I know how complicated this can feel. I've stood in that place too. Broken, confused, angry, and wondering why healing had to feel so lonely. But I also know the holy ground of taking that first step toward forgiveness. It's not a grand moment. It's often quiet, trembling, and done with tears in your eyes, but it's real. It's holy. It's the start of something sacred. Sometimes you won't feel like forgiving. That's okay. Forgiveness doesn't always start with your emotions. It often starts with obedience. You may have to speak it before you feel it. And you may have to do it again tomorrow and the day after that. That's not failure. That's the process of breaking the chains one link at a time. For eventually you'll begin to notice a shift. The tightness in your chest will loosen. The rehearsed mental arguments will quiet. The weight will start to lift. And you'll realize that while they may have broken something in you, God has been rebuilding you all along. Stronger, softer, and more free. Forgiveness is not approval. It's not forgetting. It's not trusting again. It's not opening the door to more harm. It's simply this, a holy decision to say, you don't get to keep me stuck here anymore. And in that surrender, God begins to do his deepest work, not in them, but in you. One of the hardest truths I've had to face in my own healing journey is this. Sometimes the apology you're waiting for will never come. And if your healing is tethered to their remorse, you'll stay stuck in a cycle of hope and heartbreak that never lets you breathe. We think closure comes from the other person acknowledging what they did, expressing regret, and making things right. And while that may happen in some cases, in others, it just doesn't. But that doesn't mean your story has to end in brokenness. It means God is inviting you to a different kind of healing, one that doesn't depend on them, but is completely sustained by him. There's a deep ache that comes with waiting for someone to see how they hurt you. You imagine what you'd say if they came to you and finally understood the pain they caused. Maybe you've spent nights replaying conversations in your head, rewriting endings, hoping for reconciliation, or at the very least, acknowledgement. But sometimes people can't or won't give you what you need. And sometimes they move on while you stay behind, still holding the pieces. That can feel devastating, but it can also be a turning point. What if the closure your heart craves isn't found in their words, but in your own choice to close the chapter, even if they never say they're sorry? That's not giving up. That's grace. That's strength. That's choosing to no longer let someone else's inability to take responsibility keep you from taking your next step forward. When we stop waiting for them to fix what they broke, we start realizing we don't have to be powerless. We can begin the healing work ourselves, with God holding every shattered part. The lie we're tempted to believe is that we need their remorse to release our pain. But what if I told you your healing doesn't have to wait another day? That even in the silence, even in the absence of resolution, you can still be whole again. Because healing is not about what they do. It's about what you allow God to do in you. It's about leaning into his presence, where every tear is seen, every wound is known, and every scar is safe. Forgiveness isn't a reward we give to someone who finally owns up to their actions. It's a gift we give ourselves so we can live free. And that freedom doesn't mean we pretend everything is okay. It means we refuse to let what happened define everything that comes next. The moment we stop waiting for them to make it right is the moment we invite God to begin making us new. It might feel unfair, even backwards. Why should you be the one doing all this soul work when they haven't changed at all? That's a real question, and God is not afraid of it. But here's the thing, forgiveness is never about fairness. It's about freedom. And your freedom is too important to be left in the hands of someone who didn't value it in the first place. The apology may never come. The moment of clarity you've prayed for may not arrive, but your healing isn't held hostage to their transformation. It's anchored in God's truth, his love, and his power to redeem what feels unredeemable. You can stop waiting for them to see the damage and start trusting God to repair what they never could. This journey isn't easy. It takes courage to walk away from the need for validation. It takes faith to believe that closure isn't always a conversation, it's a decision. And it takes strength to stand in the silence and still declare, I will heal even without their words. That kind of strength, that's not natural. That's supernatural. That's what God does in a heart that's surrendered. And it's more than possible for you too. One of the most misunderstood aspects of forgiveness is the assumption that it means we have to continue allowing access to our hearts, our lives, and our peace. But here's a truth that can both protect and empower you. Forgiveness and boundaries are not enemies. In fact, healthy boundaries are often what make true forgiveness possible. You can absolutely forgive someone and still decide that certain patterns can no longer continue. Forgiveness doesn't mean placing yourself in harm's way again. Forgiveness means letting go of bitterness, not discernment. It's a tender balance to hold grace and wisdom at the same time. We are called to love, to forgive, and to walk in compassion. But we are also called to guard our hearts. And guarding your heart doesn't mean you're holding a grudge. It means you've learned from what broke you. And now you're choosing to respond with intentional care rather than automatic access. It's not cold, it's not cruel, it's stewardship. There's a difference between having a soft heart and soft boundaries. A soft heart is tender before God. It stays teachable. It stays open to healing. But boundaries help ensure that softness doesn't get trampled on again and again. If you find yourself stuck in cycles of hurt, it may not be a lack of forgiveness. It might be a lack of boundaries. And boundaries aren't walls built in bitterness. They are gates guided by wisdom. Sometimes we confuse forgiveness with reconciliation, but reconciliation requires two people willing to do the work. Forgiveness, however, only requires one, just you, before God. You can forgive someone completely in your heart and still recognize that restoration of relationship may not be possible or healthy. That doesn't make you less spiritual, that makes you honest, that makes you safe. God never asks us to ignore red flags in the name of forgiveness. He never tells us to abandon discernment just to keep peace. In fact, one of the most honoring things we can do with our pain is to let it teach us, to let it grow our understanding, to let it shape our decisions in a way that leads us to health, not harm. Boundaries don't make you hard-hearted, they make you wise-hearted. Forgiveness frees you from the chains of resentment. Boundaries keep you from being rechained. The two must walk hand in hand if lasting peace is what you're truly after. It's not unforgiving to say, I've released you, but I no longer allow you to be in a place where you can repeatedly hurt me. That's not bitterness, that's bravery. And it takes a mature heart to know the difference. Sometimes the deepest act of forgiveness is stepping back. Not because you haven't forgiven, but because you have. You've released the offense, you've done the internal work, and now you are choosing not to participate in the same unhealthy pattern. That is not a failure to forgive. That is the fruit of wisdom. This kind of clarity doesn't come easily. It comes from spending time with God, asking Him for insight and peace about how to move forward. Every situation is different. Some relationships can heal with time and change. Others require distance to stay whole. But in all of it, God honors your effort to obey Him with both grace and truth. You can love someone, forgive someone, even pray blessings over their life, and still choose not to let them sit at the same table of your heart. That doesn't mean you're unkind. It means you've learned to love yourself the way God loves you, with protection, wisdom, and dignity. Forgiveness is a powerful beginning. Boundaries are what help it last. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as a single sweeping act, one powerful prayer, one emotional moment, one decision that erases all the pain. But the truth is, forgiveness is rarely a one-time event. It's a process, a journey, and sometimes it's a long one. It's not always a clean break from the wound. Often it's a slow unraveling of bitterness, a daily laying down of resentment, and a repeated decision to move forward, even when your feelings beg you to go back. There may be days when you feel full of peace and strength, like you truly let go. And then, without warning, something triggers the memory, a smell, a place, a thought, and suddenly you feel the pain rise again like a wave crashing through your chest. In those moments, you may wonder if you've really forgiven at all. But hear this, the presence of pain doesn't mean the absence of forgiveness. It simply means you're still healing, and healing takes time. Forgiveness is less about a one-time choice and more about what you choose every time the memory resurfaces. Do you choose to reattach yourself to the bitterness? Or do you choose once again to release it into the hands of God? That's what makes forgiveness a process. It's active, ongoing, and deeply spiritual. Some wounds are so deep that you'll find yourself forgiving the same offense more than once. That's not failure, that's faithfulness. God is incredibly patient with your process. He's not rushing you through it. He doesn't shame you for taking longer than you thought you would. In fact, He honors every small act of surrender, every whispered prayer of release, every tear cried in secret, because He knows that forgiveness isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a path you walk with Him, one step at a time, and no step is wasted when your heart is postured toward healing.